Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you're staying dry today. I know in my part of Massachusetts, we were woken up with quite the light show this morning and possible hail. So we're going to get started in just a minute here. We're letting everyone in. Just so you're aware, we are recording this so that members who can't be here today can take advantage of. Oh, nope, that's not what I meant to do. Of watching the video later. Okay, so we're going to start with some slides, and seeing as how it is 12:01, we do want to, be very respectful of everyone's time. So we'll start with some slides, but first I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Alicia Mallon. I am a field director for MASC. I also run searches and do workshops and all those sort of things. My part of the state is sort of above Massachusetts, up towards Maine and New Hampshire. And we also have with us today Sean Costello. So Sean, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Sean Costello. I'm Alicia for the South Shore, Cape, and Islands. So I do all the searches, trainings, workshops, all that fun stuff that Alicia gets to do down for all the communities, pretty much from Boston all the way down to Fall River, New Bedford, the Cape and Islands.
And when we open the floor for our chat, we have two chairs that'll be joining us today that are part of the chair chat that we're going to be discussing today, Adam and Justin, and we will introduce them when we get to our open forum. So I'm going to start sharing the slides. Let me just do that right here. Okay. All right, so this is Chair Chat, MASC Learning Lunch. We're thrilled to have all of you with us today. Most of you who are currently chairs will recognize that picture. That is clearly a meeting in progress. As chairs, you have to balance a lot of things. You are, taking care of your members, you're making sure the meeting is running. And we wanted to have this learning lunch with you all because there's so much that happens that we can't really prepare you for, but other chairs can tell you about their experiences, and you can have discussions with them about best practices and things like that. And there's a really great group that I inherited from my predecessor, Dorothy Presser, and they get together fairly regularly as chairs to talk about those things. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean for the first couple of slides. Sean, let me know when you want me to flip them.
Great. Awesome. So I think first and foremost, what I'd like to say is that those of you who are here that have already been chairs understand that while we can give you so much information today and we can have a really great informative discussion, there are certain things about being the chair of the school committee that you can only learn by being the chair of the school committee. There's a lot of things that are baptism by fire when you first get elected, and there's a lot of things that even if you do it for however many years, you're still learning as you go. I'm very lucky to be on the Marshfield School Committee, aside from my work with MASC, and I've been on that for 10 years, and I've been the chair of the committee for 9 years now. And it's at the point where I said to Alicia and the other field directors the other day, we reorganized, and I said, despite my best effort, I have been reelected as the chair of the committee. So I feel your pain. And I am here as a resource for you, as I know Alicia is as well. But so there is a lot of different duties that the chair has to meet, and there's certain definitions of the chair that we want to make sure you know. First of all, what we always say to folks is that the chair of the school committee is the servant of the assembly. You are not the master of the assembly, you are the servant of the body. That's a very important distinction, especially for folks who may be a first-time chair or who may not have as much experience with what it means to be the chair of a committee. You're the first among equals. That means you're the face of the committee in a lot of ways. In many ways, you're speaking on behalf of the committee. You are running the meetings. You're the first face that folks see when they think of the school committee and when they see the school committee, but you have no greater power than any other individual member of the committee. And you're the chief volunteer. You're the one that should be stepping up saying that you'll do this, you'll do that, you'll represent the committee at this, you'll represent the committee at that. For example, last night I stood on stage at our scholarship ceremony in Marshfield for 2.5 hours and shook hands with all the kids getting a scholarship because that's the job of the chair. It's just what the chair is supposed to do. You're the chief volunteer in the district. And Alicia, we can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Thank you. So the chair, as it says, is more than just presiding. It's a time-consuming job. And those of you who have done the job before or are doing the job now, you know this, that being the chair is a commitment. It's not something that you just sign up for and go to a meeting as you would as a regular member. While you have no more individual power, you certainly have more of an individual time commitment because you'll be speaking frequently with the superintendent. You're the bridge between the superintendent and the committee itself. And there's just a lot of different expectations of your time. With that comes an expectation of attention to detail. The chair is the person who comes up with the agenda. The chair has to be attentive to the requests of the other members. The chair has to be attentive to the requests and recommendations of the administration, the superintendent, and everybody that reports to the superintendent. That takes a lot of attention to detail. A chair needs to have leadership skills, but I would certainly say in particular, a chair should have servant leadership skills. The chair it oftentimes will require the person in that position to be the out front leader, somebody who can be leading by example. But a lot of the time, too, it's going to require the behind the scenes work that maybe nobody else wants to do. So those leadership skills as a well-rounded leader are incredibly important to have a successful committee chair. You have to have the interpersonal skills. Again, you're that bridge between the committee and the superintendent. You're also the bridge between the committee itself. You're the person that they go to with certain requests for agenda items. You're the person they'll go to for informational updates. There's so many different things that the chair has to be able to communicate with other folks, and that comes to communication skills as well. But aside from communicating with the folks you're working for, you have to communicate with the folks that you're working with. You have to communicate with the folks you're working for, which are the residents of your town, the voters, the constituents that elect you. You have to ensure that the priorities, the vision of the district are being effectively communicated to the community. That's something you do in tandem with the superintendent, and that's an important piece of the job as well. And the chair has to have knowledge of the legal obligations of being the chair. You have to be the protector, the first line of defense for your committee when it comes to any potential open meeting law issues. The chair has to be well versed in collective bargaining because requests for bargaining will come to the chair directly. And the chair should be knowledgeable and aware of certain conflicts of interest that may exist so they can advise other members of the committee when there may be a conflict present.
Oh, there you go.
So, what are the responsibilities of the chair throughout the year that you serve as the chair? You guide the work of the committee. Again, you set the agenda and you ensure that the work of the committee is translating back into your district's goals. You keep the committee organized. This is more than just ensuring that your agenda is properly posted on time and that you're meeting the open meeting law requirements and all those fun things that come with being a public servant. It's your job to ensure that subcommittee assignments are properly filled and that there's an equal distribution of work. It's your job to ensure that meeting dates and times get communicated effectively to your members. It's your job to work with the membership to figure out if you want to do workshops with folks like us at MASC. There's all sorts of different things that you have to do to keep the committee organized. Again, you focus on the mission, the vision, and the goals of your district. That's your ultimate duty as the chair it all pours into that one overarching goal of student achievement. That's what we're all aiming to succeed in. So student achievement should be the primary focus at all times of the chair, which is sometimes, to put it bluntly, a difficult thing when folks have political opinions or a platform that they ran for the committee on, or certain beliefs. Sometimes you have to put some of those things aside to ensure that the ultimate goal in everything that you're doing is to focus on student achievement. Your job as the chair is to share leadership responsibilities. Not everything should be the responsibility of the chair. The chair shouldn't be the person on every single subcommittee or leading every single big issue. The best chairs know how to delegate. If there's a big issue that you're facing, for example, if you're putting together a fee structure for your transportation, and you're looking at maybe redoing that, and you have a transportation subcommittee and you know it's going to be a big year for that subcommittee, maybe look to another experienced member or another member who's passionate about that issue to take leadership and ownership of that issue. Be the chair that can delegate and ensure that while the work is getting done, it's not always you leading that process, that you're sometimes just the facilitator. And again, just the ultimate goal for you is to achieve student achievement by helping the committee be greater than the sum of its parts. Again, hammering home, as the chair, you are one of five, you're one of seven, however many folks are on your committee. You have no greater authority, you have no greater power than the individuals. No individual on the committee really has any individual authority whatsoever as a school committee member, but as a body, your job is incredibly important, and the chair is what guides that work. The chair is the compass for the committee. So if you're serving as the chair now, you certainly have a difficult job, but it's a very important one, and it's uh, vital that you know that you're supposed to be working with your fellow committee members and steering the ship together.
So, as we mentioned at the beginning, there's a group of chairs who meet fairly regularly out in my neck of the woods. I was very fortunate when I came on staff at MASC to be trained into my role by Dorothy Presser. And there were a group of chairs that she sat with fairly regularly that they had put together this sort of chair chat, this chair roundtable, where they would meet. It started during the pandemic, and they all sort of felt very disconnected. And that was for those of you who served during that time, or who were, maybe you had kids in your districts, or were just watching what was going on. It was a really tough time for chairs trying to figure out what you could and couldn't do, navigating online meetings, all of that. So this group of people decided they wanted to start meeting on Zoom fairly regularly, and just talk to each other about what was going on in their districts. It's important to note that this is not your division meetings. You should still 100% connect to your divisions. There are really great division leaders out there who can help you both regionally, and then there are divisions that are more affinity groups. This is not your division. This would be a smaller group of people, maybe in your general area. The one that I attend is usually the Dual County League schools. It's Acton, Boxborough, Lincoln, Sudbury, it's Westford, it's Chelmsford, it's that sort of, it's Concord Carlisle who started it. It's that area right there. And they meet together that way, not because they're all the same division, but more so because they're all in the same area and they're all close to each other, so they can meet more regularly. It connects chairs and vice chairs, as I've sat with them over the last couple of years. There have been some aspiring chairs and some vice chairs who have sat with us as well. They meet in person 3 or 4 times a year. They can meet remotely as well. Thankfully, we have that extension into 2027. And it's not a posted meeting because it's not a quorum of any of the other committees. It's a group of chairs and vice chairs, officers of their own committees, who are meeting to talk about best practices and discuss things with each other. So it's not a quorum of any committee. It also provides a really good connection through email. I am very grateful that they have included me on their email threads. So every once in a while, someone will throw a question out to the group. Hey, how are you doing your fee structure this year? And everyone will chime in with, well, this is what we did, and here's what we did. And a couple of years ago, this is where we got our information from. And it's a great resource for everyone. And you can invite your field director. We love to come out and chat with you guys, or you can just keep it vice chairs or chairs. And, that's entirely up to you. We will do what you would like. If you want to start one of these groups, we're more than happy to help you kick one off and then let you take over. It's entirely up to you. So some of the topics that they talk about fairly regularly: operating protocols and agendas. There's a lot of, this is how we do that, that's shared. Policy development, especially when we come up with these situations where one district is trying to develop something like a cell phone policy, and they sort of feel like they're going it alone. The chairs being able to reach out to each other and ask what resources they use is absolutely phenomenal. Budget process, I see a lot of budget questions that go through. Subcommittee functions. Not every district has the same subcommittees, and how they're using them can be different. And it's a great way to find out, well, what is, the town next to me doing? And maybe that can work for us as well. And like I said, resource sharing. Here's a list of all of our fees and here's what they used to be. And, take from that what works for you. And then frankly, it's camaraderie and commiseration and snacks. It's a nice time to meet with other people who you can sort of look at, and that they know what you're going through, and they know, you have a shared common language of, I need to do this for my committee. How can I do this? So we are now going to take the slides down and open it up for a chat. And we have with us today, Adam, would you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Alicia. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Klein. I am the chair of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee, and I am the outgoing chair, but we'll just move a seat over to the right next year and be the vice chair for Boxborough. I've served in Acton-Boxborough for 7 years on the school committee and a total of 3 years as chair.
And I'm not seeing Justin in the list, but Justin McCarthy, if you are here, unmute yourself at any point. And my thought was, at this point, we want you all to talk to each other. I will open the floor if you want to raise your hand. I will call on people just so that we don't all start shouting at the same time. But if you want to ask questions of each other, maybe raise some concerns, now is the time.
Hi, I have a question. I'm not seeing the raise hand function. Is it hidden somewhere?
Oh, oh, weird. I don't know.
Oh.
Okay, that's fine. Go for it.
Thank you, Alicia. And I remember you and Sean from our training at the conference this summer, and that was very helpful. Thank you. I'm Dan Newman. I'm the current vice chair in Sharon, and possibly will be the chair next year if everything goes well. And I have a question about the appropriate level of communication between the superintendent and the chair and the rest of the committee. So, how much information should the chair have through conversations with the superintendent versus the rest of the committee? Should there be no gap between what the chair knows and what the rest of the committee knows about kind of the day-to-day stuff or what the superintendent's thinking? Or should the superintendent really be communicating with the committee as a whole? Like, is it limited to agenda planning and more facilitator stuff? Or does the chair really have a special position where they can have like special advisory roles with the superintendent, or is that not appropriate? And like if the superintendent, for example, came to the chair or the chair and the vice chair and said, I really want your opinion about this thing that's going on, and I don't know how the committee's going to respond to it. Is that an appropriate discussion where we could provide feedback and potentially that could even lead to a decision by the superintendent without it going to the committee at all? Is that appropriate? Or should at that point you just say, this is really something the whole committee has to discuss, and I shouldn't be privileged that way. What's your take on that?
Dan, I think the first thing I would say is it really depends on the makeup and personality of your committee and your superintendent. And so I can share a little bit about my experience in Acton-Boxborough. I was joking just the other day that by the time our superintendent is presenting something at school committee, I've heard it at least 3 times already. And that's the relationship that we have, is that, he'll run things by me in our weekly meetings, and we do have weekly, sort of one-on-one or leadership meetings. The vice chairs are always invited to those because I really see, particularly for our committee, and I'll just share that Acton-Boxborough, obviously a 2-town region, we have a committee of 11 people, 4 from Boxborough and 7 from Acton, so it's a pretty big group. So Sean, your picture there at the beginning, I've got a lot more velociraptors after me any given week. But I do meet with the superintendent weekly, and there are a lot of things that he does sort of say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, be it a goal, be it a budget item, and there's some back and forth, but it's always with the goal of getting the message right so that when it's presented to the committee for ultimate deliberation, it's a cohesive message. So I think that's how I sort of handle that. There are also other things, and again, this depends on how your committee wants to work. There are times where the superintendent will text me and say, hey, do you have a second to chat? And that usually means he's giving me a heads up about something that's happened in one of the buildings. And it's really not for us to take any action on, but it's always sort of the superintendent making sure that the committee chair, and then if there is some maybe other committee members who might be affected, then I might reach out to them about something. Say there was an incident in one of the schools, and I know that, one of the school committee members has a kid at that school, I'll let them know. And it's really, again, not for us to take action, it's for us to just be informed. And so those are sort of how I handle those. There's very little, information that's presented to me as the chair with the superintendent that isn't then brought to the committee as a whole at some point.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add on to that too, really quickly, Dan and Adam, great job. So just kind of adding on to your piece about like if something's happening in the schools, a lot of times, at least in Marshfield where I am, we have a committee that's pretty active in the community, and parents will reach out to that committee a lot. And if something happens at a school and one of those members hears about it, our protocol is that the member will call the chair of the committee first before bugging the superintendent, who may be very busy with the day-to-day operation. So our protocol is that the members go to the chair instead of all the members having a free-for-all to just go to the superintendent. Although the superintendent has an open line of communication with the members, we just have that kind of go to the chair. So the chair has to be well informed on what's going on and kept up to date on that, with not as many details as would sometimes be, I guess not preferred, but like if there's some big issue going on with a personnel issue, like I typically don't know who the people are that are involved, just that there's something going on. So it's all always done appropriately and above board. And I do want to say very quickly for folks, while it is not a requirement to be bald and bearded to be a chair of the committee, Adam and I both have that covered. So it is recommended, but not required.
It's an added benefit.
Oh, shucks. So I can never be a chair. Oh, no. So I would also recommend, and I know I beat this drum, and anyone who's had a workshop with me knows I beat this drum, but operating protocols can be absolutely life-saving because we talk about best practices, but if you don't put them into a document that people can refer to, no one has any idea what they're supposed to be doing. And putting into your operating protocols, your communication pathways, how agendas get set, all of that makes it easier on you as a chair to be able to then refer back to the operating protocols. And we recommend you review those every year. You recommit to them every year, depending on what time during the year you have people seated, whether you're a town in the spring or a city in January. Recommit to those operating protocols because that will help you as a chair keep everyone on track and help refer them back to what you all agreed upon in the beginning. So we did helpfully see, Adam said hand up is under the reactions, but if anyone else wants to jump in with a question, I know we have some, let me pull up the chat as well, but if anyone wants to jump in with a question now, go for it.
I had a quick question about the operating protocols, if that's okay.
Sure, go for it.
So I am not a chair right now. I do have some desire to be. Sorry, I'm on the Berlin-Boylston School Committee, more towards Worcester. And so we don't have operating protocols, and we have a handbook that's old, and I've brought it up several times, and it's not been put on the agenda. So I didn't know, I know MASC and will come out and, help establish operating protocols. But I didn't know if you had any suggestions on how to try to go about doing that.
Absolutely. So if you email your field director, which Berlin-Boylston, forgive me, I think you're Tracy, but you can email any field director. One of the things that I was told from the very beginning is we have territories, but we're not territorial. If you know someone's name and you want to email them, please do. We can send you out some example operating protocols from some districts that we know do them very well. And what I would recommend for developing operating protocols is you actually have the school committee vote to have your policy subcommittee work on them. Then a smaller group of people can do that. And it's in a posted meeting. It's absolutely in line with all of the rules and regulations. But then that smaller group can work on them and bring them to the full committee. And there are some districts that do onboarding really well. And I'm actually putting together a couple of those. The district I currently serve in does new member onboarding. Fantastic. Predates me. It's great. But there are some other districts that do that really well also. And we are working, MASC is actually working to pull some of those together. So if you just want to email one of us, we can send you some example operating protocols. And then we will also, you can have us out if you want, or you can send it to your policy subcommittee. We're always also available if you want to email a draft to your only one member. Don't make it a quorum. Don't put everyone on the email. One of you can email us a draft and say, hey, do you have any feedback? And we can send you some feedback that your policy subcommittee can work with.
And I'll share, Jessica, from the point of view of a chair, if there's something that one of my committee members wants us to address, either be it something like protocols or a topic in the public that they want to put on the agenda, they'll typically come to me and say, hey, can we do this? And we carry a sort of year-long schedule spreadsheet of what we're going to do in each of our meetings. And so if it's something that you know, as the chair, and this is sort of one of those sort of roles of the chair, making sure that you're keeping the business of the committee moving forward. If we see there's value in that and it's important, we'll say, all right, how do we slot this in? And I'll just add that we did a protocols workshop as one of our sort of summer or spring workshops once. And it was super helpful to get that base document done. And now each year, sort of in one of our first meetings of the year, we all review that again, we all sign it, we put it out on our table at the beginning of each meeting so everyone sees it. But yeah, to get it done, like if there's that challenge, it's really about sort of petitioning the chair to say, hey, can we get this on the agenda somehow? Can we do a workshop on this?
Excellent. So the next hand I see is Tori. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Tori Campbell. I am one of Adam's members, and so I was going to ask you, Adam, to talk a little bit about how you handle those really tense moments, both in public comment and even among the committee sometimes when we're talking about things, because I think that's something you do really well. And so I'm curious both how you kind of prepare and see that coming, and then the ones that have caught you off guard, how you were ready and what your thought process was in the moment.
Thanks. And Tori's asking because she'll be the chair next year and she's trying to figure out how to do this. So, you know, what I would say is some of this was just learning through fire. You know, we through the pandemic had some, as I'm sure many other committees did, had some very upset members of the public coming and talking to us and sort of, you know, in many cases yelling at us during the public participation part of the meeting. And what I found really helpful about that was to sort of separate me, myself, as a human and a person from me, myself, a member of the committee. And that can be hard because often, you know, the member of the public who's upset at you is calling your name out specifically and saying you did this terrible, terrible thing. I will tell you there are many times where I'm sitting there stone-faced trying to be a committee member and someone is very upset at us and I'm just sort of boiling underneath. But I think that's the first thing with members of the public. And we also made a change, and this was one of the topics that actually the change we made came out of the chair chat that I went to, where we talked about how are we handling public participation. This was about a year ago when there were some new legal precedents set around public participation. And just again, like talking with the other chairs about how they handle it and whether or not they allow this type of comment or that type of comment and when in their agenda, we made a pretty significant change in our public participation policy, actually not policy, but the way we implement it, to only allow comments at one point during the meeting. We used to allow comments throughout the entire meeting. We also used to have meetings that went till 10:30 at night. And so one of the things we did was say, we're only going to accept comments now. You can talk about anything that's on the agenda, anything you want, but we're not going to come back to comments during the middle of the meeting. And that also helped to just sort of keep the tensions lower because you knew that you got through the 20 minutes or so, and then we were on to our business. So that's the public comment side of it. Tori, you also asked about sort of amongst our committee members. And I will say that we have, even though it's a large committee, we have a really well-aligned committee, really great working relationship with everybody on the committee. But there are different opinions sometimes. And there are some members who feel like they need to speak up around some of those opinions. And I will tell you honestly, I struggle with that. Because the last thing I want is for our committee members to be sort of arguing with each other around the committee table. But at the same point, both perspectives are important to be heard. And so I really try to balance the opportunity for those members to speak, but also those uncomfortable moments where I do need to sort of shut the committee members down and just remind everybody, hey, we're getting close to that hour of the night where we're not going to be as productive, or hey, there are lots of other important things that we need to cover tonight. So let's move on with that. So it's definitely sort of reading the room, understanding those personalities, and trying to just focus the committee back on the topic and the agenda.
Did you notice that the public engagement decreased when you moved the public comment to just at the beginning?
It's hard to tell because we also, you know, learned a lot and sort of did a lot more outreach and a lot more communication with the community about some of the more hot button topics. And we weren't talking about masks anymore, and we weren't talking about mascots anymore. So that like those big items for us sort of went away. We even had some frequent flyers though, who would come and say to me at the beginning of every meeting, I don't like that I can only talk at the beginning of the meeting because I can't ask you questions about the materials on the agenda, and then would proceed to ask 3 minutes worth of questions on the material on the agenda and would actually get answers during the meeting. So that it's one of those things where I did get sort of we did get called out frequently, but I also persevered and said, look, everything we do is, everything everyone always says is, well, we've always done it this way. And so you kind of have to hold fast for a year and a half before we've always done it this way becomes a new way.
So I think we say this very often in the office, we get to, at our charting the courses, we get to talk to all of you throughout the course of charting the course and our workshops and things like that. So we can explain to you all what public comment really is. And we often say school committee meetings are business meetings of the school committee in public, not public meetings. You get to hear that. The public doesn't often understand that, and it's hard to communicate that. So we also, one of the better best practices that I've seen too is a statement on public comment, literally your public comment policy, and then talking about, it'll be 20 minutes and everyone gets 3 minutes and you can't share your time, and having the chair read that at the beginning of public comment to explain what public comment is can actually be super effective.
And noting in your protocol, in your statement too, that your protocol states that school committee members do not respond to public comment. That I think that's huge in to Alicia's point, stopping your meeting from turning into an episode of Parks and Recreation.
Oh, I like Parks and Recreation. But honestly, you can't have that back and forth, because you could actually end up in an open meeting law violation if you're having a conversation with someone that devolves into deliberation on something that's not on the agenda. It's not in anyone's best interest to not have all of the available information properly noticed on your agenda.
Right.
Hi, this is Randy. I'm from North Middlesex. Something we had going for a 2 to 3 year period, and since has dropped, and I want to try and get it going again for public comment, is if it was a substantial topic or something that needed to be replied to, the chair would let the person know who it was being referred to. So sometimes it was referred to the superintendent to follow up. Sometimes it would be a subcommittee on the committee to follow up with the person and on the topic. And this way they were known that they were heard, and that there's going to be some action, and it doesn't just get said. We all agreed, yes, we should do something, and then it gets dropped. So we were kind of assigning it so it didn't get lost in the meeting.
It's a great point, Randy. Oftentimes we would say to a member of the public, please send us an email. We've got the school committee shell, send the superintendent an email. That's a way that we can then respond. We can then decide if we're going to put it on the agenda. And the other thing that I would say, which has sort of started to evolve for us, is, one of our school committee rules that we have internally is we don't like surprises, right? Like if you've got questions, send them to the chair and the superintendent beforehand. I've actually started to get heads up from people who are going to come speak at public participation and say, hey, I want to come talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Last night, in fact, we had some of our students come and present both some of their civics presentations, but also a request to do an athletics waiver. They told me about it beforehand. And so one of the things that I did was talk to the superintendent and say, hey, what would this look like? Do we need policy? Is it just something that we can ask the high school to do? And he said, it's probably something we could just ask the high school to do. And I said to him, okay, great. What I'm going to do at the meeting is not have a deliberation, but just say, I've already asked the superintendent to ask the high school to look into this and come and present on it at a future meeting. If anybody would like us to put this on the agenda, let me know and we can talk about it later. But there, the community member got to make their comment, told me about it beforehand, and actually got to feel some feedback in the meeting. So obviously that's a great example. More often than not, someone's coming and surprising us and they're angry about something at public participation. Follow up by email is always the best for us. And then we decide, can we get it on an agenda?
And that's a perfect example of when we at MASC say no surprises. We don't mean don't bring things up. We mean if you're going to have an effective discussion about something, sometimes you need the background information.
Exactly.
And knowing that someone's going to request that makes your meetings more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, Randy, your hand was next.
Thank you. I have a couple of things, but I will give everybody, their time and not. So I guess my first thing that I will bring up is, how many of you, as far as for your committees, have we've called it a pacing guide, or it's annual agenda items, or keeping track of what needs to get done from year to year. I've been on the school committee since 2009, so was that 16 years now? I was chair for about 4 or 5 of those years. We had very strong superintendents. And unfortunately for a lot of people, if you're going along and you don't have issues, you don't know you're doing something wrong or that something's missing until all of a sudden you're looking and going, where is this? And in that time, we relied on the superintendent, knowing what we needed to bring up, the jobs we had to do, year after year after year. And we don't have that now. Right now, we have 7 of our 9 committee members currently have 2 years or less experience on the board. Most of them, actually 4 of them, are under a year. And so we're running into things where that knowledge base is gone. And I'm wondering, how do committees have a workaround? How do you bring, when you have such a big turnover, how do you have the work actually keep going without hesitation, without flaws, without missing a beat?
That's a great question. We 2 years ago had 5 new members out of 11 on our committee. And so we faced a very similar task. And I sat down with the superintendent and we said, all right, how are we going to manage this? Because I think for many of us on the school committee, the best training is on the job training as a school committee member. And so we knew that we needed to take more time in our meetings to sort of go over what was the meaning of this in budget season. How does all of that work? And so we were fortunate. We do have a document that is that sort of school committee meeting calendar that is an internal working document. It dates back, I just looked, to 2017, and we just keep adding a new tab each year. And so it has some of the requisite items, like 45 days before town meeting in Acton, we need to have a vote on our budget. And so those must-dos get put in there. And we've evolved over the past few years where, again, the goal for us was to get from 3-hour meetings to hour-and-a-half meetings. And so we really talked about what are the things that are most important? How do we focus the committee's attention in the business meetings on goals and on business? And so it's been an ongoing conversation with the superintendent. We do document that all in a document. And you could see the evolution this year. In fact, we just made a change. I think, like many of you, we meet twice a month. And we said, okay, we're going to actually focus the 2 meetings separately, because what we found is when we have big presentations, goal focused, and things where we need the committee to sort of think and deliberate, it's really hard to then also do business things. And vote policy and vote, give budget updates. And so we literally said once a month, we're going to have a business-oriented meeting, and we're going to make sure that that's when our policies come in. That's when we're going to do budget updates. That's when we're going to do enrollment updates and staffing updates and all of those things that are sort of maybe shorter snippets, but there's a lot of them that are very much focused on running the day-to-day business. Every other meeting is going to be around one of our strategic goals. It's going to be around recognition for students and teachers in the district. And that way, we didn't feel like we were sort of task switching a lot during the meetings. And we, more often than not, got out in under an hour and a half. So, I think it's an evolution for sure. Documenting is super helpful. And then having that relationship with the superintendent where you say, how would we make this better? What are the pains that we have? How do we solve them?
I'll let somebody else go before I do another topic.
Oh, Alicia, you're muted.
Of course. I'm going to get a t-shirt that says you're on mute. Lauren, I believe you were next.
Hi, I want to commiserate with the larger committee people. I'm from Wachusett, so I'm one of 16, but we are down from 22, which we redid when we redid our regional agreement. So
Progress.
I'm chair of a much smaller group of 16. My question was for Adam. I think one of our big things at Wachusett is communication. And no matter how hard we try, and we worked with the administration to do a lot more around our budget this year, of having a budget website. And the district started a Facebook page, which they had always been fighting over, but we put a lot of budget information out on that. My question, you had mentioned that you were doing more community outreach and communicating with the community. So you weren't getting as much at public address. And that's something as chair that I want to address, because I do feel like as a school committee, we could be getting more out to the community, but it becomes that weird line of when does the district communicate, when does the school committee communicate. So I was just wondering how you guys dealt with that in Acton-Boxborough.
Thanks, Lauren. I would say, honestly, we continue to struggle with it. It's been one of our committee goals for the past 2 years. And, you know, we had great support last year, particularly in Acton, when we passed an override, and the support came from our teachers union. So lots of great outreach, but also, you know, really complicated to do some of that communication outreach in a year when you've got an override with conflict of interest and some of the restrictions there. But, you know, one of the things that I've tried to do with a larger committee, there are some negatives, right? Trying to manage all of that, but with a larger committee, you also have a lot more, you know, boots on the ground and different levels of expertise. So we've got folks who are strategy experts. We've got folks who are really connected with our PTOs. And so what we're trying to do is get one person. And this, I think this was the other thing that we learned. We tried once. We had 2 years of a community engagement subcommittee. And the challenge with having a community engagement subcommittee is now it is a subcommittee that has posted meetings and has to be open and has to have minutes and has to have a chair and all of that. And really all we wanted to do was have someone who could organize the committee and tell them, go here on this date and represent the committee. And so we changed that this year, and we just said to one person, you're in charge. You know when all of the special events are in towns. You know, you can go and sign us up for all those things, and you can go to the town halls and get office hours and libraries and then post a list and just and because this is not about deliberation, this is about scheduling, we could do that by email with the committee members and say, hey, there's a, you know, we're going to be at the Pfeiffer's Day Festival next Saturday. Can you all sign up for a 45-minute slot? Can someone go and set up the tent and all of that? So that's been really helpful. We struggle with the social media as well. The district does have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, and I think we're still trying to evolve. Last night we had one of our younger members trying to explain what a link tree is to our superintendent so that he could put links into his Instagram account. But you know, I think we struggled with it where we continue to evolve. We may have an override coming in Boxborough this coming year, so again, more outreach. It's one of the tougher things, I think. Like I said, it's been a goal for us for years, and we continue to try and make it better.
Thank you.
Excellent questions, guys. Kelly, I think you're up next.
Hello, everybody. From the Duxbury School Committee, and I actually spend a lot of time on the phone with Sean. So my question to other chairs is, we have protocols, we have subcommittees, but everybody on my committee is an expert, and everybody wants a hand in everything. So I need advice on how to run a meeting without it going off the rails, which it always does, without seeming to be rude to some of the exuberant members, but keep things on track without seeming like the ogre.
That's a tough one. You know,
Yes, it is.
a lot of times I have conversations with my superintendent as we're planning the agenda to sort of think about how do we present this material, and knowing some of those hot button topics for specific committee members, can we present some of that information, make sure it's in the packet in advance, and address what we think are going to be some of those questions and some of those topics. But there have definitely been times, Kelly, where I've shut down committee members. And I've said, no, we're done. We're moving on to the next topic. And they've come back at me and said, when you silence my voice, you silence my constituency. And I did not say this to that member, but my constituency is his constituency. So I think that, you know, the heat of the moment can be difficult. The other thing is, more often than not, there are other people in the room who wish that you could move forward with the meeting. And that's one of the roles of the chair, is to say, look, there are people here. Your administration, your staff is probably there, and they've been there since 7:30 in the morning. And, you know, I recognize that we want to talk through this or work it out. If it's more than what we can handle in our meeting, what we've allotted for, we've taken things and we've put them on. Either we've sent them to a subcommittee, policy, we've spun up, you know, we dealt with school resource officers a couple years ago. It was a very difficult topic, and we weren't getting anywhere with the committee as a whole. And so we said, let's spin up a subcommittee. Let's put together a group that can sort of deliberate on this and make a recommendation back to the school committee. And that's helpful, A, because you can do those things in depth, but B, it provides a cooling off period naturally that sort of tempers will calm. A recommendation will come back and things can get dealt with that way. But yeah, there are definitely times where I struggle and just sort of have to say, I'm sorry, member X, we need to move on now.
Okay, because we've had all those scenarios and I find that the complaint is, well, we never get anything done because we're always putting it off. And I'm like, well, that's municipal government. And then my last quick question, and people can just write in the chat or whatever. As far as a budget subcommittee, we had one that didn't really work out that well. So if anybody has ideas on what, you know, the charter could be for a budget subcommittee, I'm open to that, because we had one, we had 2 people, and it kind of went off the rails last year and didn't do what we had hoped it would. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Randy, you are the next person with a hand up.
Thank you. So this is kind of a 2-part question. Is the first one, which this could be answered in the chat if anybody has information, is hybrid meeting technology, and who's doing it well, and what are you doing? Because we keep being told that we can't do a hybrid because it's not reliable, and they don't want the call to drop and be in an open meeting law, and they can't hear us in the room that we're at, and we don't have the right technology to do it, and it takes too many people to run all the different parts of the technology that we have, and it's getting very, very frustrating because, especially with so many new members, we are in desperate need of having at least some of our meetings in person to have that connection between people, so that we stay civil with each other in the meetings. So that's the first question. And that kind of leads a little bit into my next question is, how do you draw the line between whether it be the person who actually is the chair or other members of the committee who want to work with central office staff? There are some legitimate reasons, an accelerated repair project. If you're on that project, you're working with central office staff on that project, in certain cases. But we tend to have somebody who is a computer science person and wanting to work with the technology department. If it's related to, let's say, trying to get hybrid meetings for the school committee, that might be okay. But if they're then talking with them and working with them on district stuff, they're bleeding into the day-to-day activities, which really is not part of our purview. The same thing as far as if we have a teacher from another district wanting to keep talking about the curriculum or different things like that. How do you separate and draw that line? Do you just have absolutely none and everything is through the chair? Do you allow it, and how do you monitor it?
I'll start with the second question, Randy. I think that's a really good one. Most of it comes through the chair and the superintendent. The exception to that is our subcommittees do have a central office staff member assigned to them. So policy, budget, and then we do have some ad hoc committees around, say, the voice of the graduate, that work that we've been doing, and the strategic planning work that we're doing. So oftentimes the subcommittee chair will work with that staff member on that item. Everything else, we work really hard to delegate that through the superintendent. And I will tell you that we've been on every end of the spectrum with regards to from committee members, from overly engaged to completely disengaged. And I think that we've really landed on a great committee and a great level of engagement right now, with a healthy respect of all of the work that the school staff does, and sort of stepping in sometimes and saying, how can I support this? And particularly if they've got time and interest, we'll find a way to do that. But knowing full well that once you've got a committee member involved in something like that, there's an extra level of sort of participation, work, concern, maybe even for district staff, because they've got that committee member who's sort of watching what they're doing. So it's a tightrope we try to balance.
Right. It's also, my concern is that a committee member having influence as a single member on the district. Because as we always keep trying to remind everybody, we do things as a body, and each individual committee member should not have extra influence or power to do anything within the district. And
Yeah.
that's where my concern is, how do you draw that line? How do you make sure that that's not occurring? Because you can't record every conversation they have with the central office staff.
Christy, I see your hand. Did you
I
want to?
just want to jump in on this because
Yeah.
so I'm from Hatfield. We're a very tiny district, and we've had a lot of conversations to kind of help guide our committee, some who have been really long term, some who have been very brand new. And we have a lot of conversations about this is our lane, because we've had committee members who really like, well, we should be talking about this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, let's go back to what is the school committee's mandate? Like, what are our prerogatives? Like, is it about the budget? Is it about policy? Is it about like, and it's like, oh, well, whatever their issue is, like the technology, like what technology they're using, that's not really our purview. So it's like, you can ask, like, so we just keep having those conversations. And over time, it's taking time, I've noticed a shift. And it's sort of like, well, if we can have that, if that subject comes up and it's about, do we need to change our policy on technology use, then that's a conversation for the committee. But it's been, we're as chair sort of gently helping coach some of those members to be like, I'm not sure how that fits in our role. And just sort of having those conversations. And sometimes it helps them have the aha, the like, oh, I can't dictate curriculum, even though I worked with this great outside consultant in my professional life. I can't come in and suggest to the district that like, you need to go hire this person. Like that's outside of our role. So that's been the guys that I have found helpful, but that's worked here, may not work everywhere.
Thank you.
I think that's great, Christy. And at the end of the day, this is sort of an unsatisfying answer, but at the end of the day, as the chair, you have to just get to the point where you say, we're done with this discussion, we're moving on with the agenda. And it's really hard to do. It's really because you want to presume the best of intentions. These people would not be sitting at the table if they weren't trying to do something good. That's why we're all here. But at the end of the day, you have to keep the meeting moving. And Sean, I don't know if you have any other suggestions there, but I think at a certain point, the chair just has to, nope, we're moving on. We've had the discussion. Blame Robert's rules.
Exactly. Well, you're absolutely right, Alicia. It just goes back to the fact that the chair's the servant of the body, and it's in the interest of the body as a whole to keep the meeting moving. And it's in the interest of the body to ensure that the work that the district needs to get done is being done. And and I'm sure Adam can speak to this too, having been an experienced chair. There's body language, right, that you can pick up on a lot of the time, where if the full membership wants to continue having a discussion and you feel like more things will come out of it that would be helpful to have in that moment, you can kind of read that and maybe keep the discussion going a little bit longer. But once you reach a point where you feel like you're going around in circles or it's one person grandstanding, you do just have to be that facilitator who keeps things moving, and do it in service to the body as a whole. The servant of the body isn't making sure that everybody feels that every single one of their million needs is met when it comes to grandstanding on an issue. Servant of the body means that doing what's best for the body as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say you've got to be really good at finding the pause in the conversation and putting your finger on the microphone and moving it on. And finding a pause, even though it feels awkward, just to cut that person off and say, all right, we're gonna move on. Thank you.
Exactly, Adam. Exactly.
And Randy, the topic of hybrid, what I will say is one of the really amazing benefits of having these chair chats with our group has been to hear about the myriad of different ways people are engaging. Some folks are still completely remote. Some people are 100% in person. Some people are hybrid. Everybody's doing something very different. We had a very sort of strong return back to in person, and even so much so because we have a large committee where we said remote participation for committee members is too difficult for us to manage right now, and we're looking at how do we bring that back. Because our committee members are busy professionals and sometimes they're traveling but can make the meeting time, but they're in the wrong state. Sometimes they are, sick with home with a sick kid. And so we're looking at remote participation more so than hybrid. Our meetings are broadcast on our local public access on YouTube. And so community members can watch what's happening, but I also feel pretty strongly that if you want to come and yell at me at a meeting, you should come do that to my face because I'm there in person. And we've not had a lot of pushback from the community saying we want to have public participation online. I know even in Concord, they'll bounce back and forth between public participation from Zoom and then in the room and Zoom in the room. Everyone's doing it a little bit differently. I think it's really about what works well for you and your committee.
Yeah, we look at hybrid. I'm not sure why I didn't think about just live streaming the meeting. The reason why we keep going to remote is because the number of people that show up from the communities to watch, and not so much with the public comment, because we don't always have a lot of that, but we're getting, anywhere between 50 and 100 people showing up online when we're remote, and in person, we might have the same 3 people all year long.
I keep the YouTube window up during our meetings and I watch how many people are online, and we'll max out during the meeting at maybe 15 or 20. If I go back to that meeting a week later, 60 or 70 people have watched that.
We record and we post them after the
Yeah.
fact, but people want to be there real time. And we've been really kind of struggling, like I said, with such a young committee that we have right now. I feel the in-person is just going to be invaluable for us to be able to just come together and be able to work together and get to know each other to be effective. But they don't want to lose that piece of people being able to watch live. So is it YouTube can live stream, or is this something that you go through your cable company?
Your cable access can actually use YouTube to live stream what they do. That's what happens in my town.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we do as well.
Yeah, all right, I will look into that, because even if we can't have
IT can as well, just in case you don't have a cable access that has that technology. So
okay.
we
Now,
can
is
do
there
both.
any open meeting law violation to have it live streamed but require public comment in person? Because it's not equal access.
So that is a very involved question, and one the lawyers are still debating. So I'm going to flag that for follow-up.
Okay.
That is an ongoing discussion with the Council of School Attorneys and with us and with DESE and with the AG's office. So I also keep being very aware of everyone's time. We could talk like this forever. And that's kind of why we wanted to do this today, is we wanted you guys to know that this was an option for you to get together your affinity groups. Take a look around your area, look at your town, look at your surrounding towns, maybe look at some of the towns that are similar to yours, and see if you can get a chair chat together. Sean is putting in the chat the information for you guys to find us, and I am putting up on if I can actually make it do it from current slide. There we go. Here are some of our upcoming events. You can find us at masc.org. We have our Summer Institute, which is going to be a collective bargaining boot camp this year. One day out in Springfield. We also have a couple charting the courses coming up. We have one in Greenfield this weekend. Be sure to share these with your new members as well, because we have Greenfield and Worcester, and then we're going to take a break for the summer, and then we'll start back up again in September and October. We're trying to sort of pace them out all over the state. And then the joint conference is coming up in November, and we'll have more information on that soon as well. If you guys have any follow-up questions, you know where to find us. I want to thank our excellent co-host today, Adam, for being here and answering all these questions. And thank you to all of you who are volunteering to do this work in your districts. It's a lot to be a school committee member. It's even more to say, yes, I will take on being chair. And I cannot express to you how much we appreciate you all for doing that. And we are here as a resource for you whenever you need it. So thank you, everyone. And I will return you to your day. Hopefully we'll actually get some sun this weekend, but it's, Massachusetts and probably not. And good luck with all those graduations happening this weekend.
Thanks, everyone.